The millionaire lived in a world that most people could only dream of. His mansion was enormous, with tall, shining pillars and sprawling gardens that seemed to go on forever. Every room was decorated with the finest furniture, the softest carpets, and walls covered with priceless paintings. His cars are the newest models, sleek and shining, parked neatly in the massive garage. On the surface, his life seemed perfect. People often saw him at fancy parties, attending business meetings, and traveling to exotic places. He had everything money could buy, yet behind the walls of his luxurious home, his heart carried a weight that no amount of wealth could lift. His greatest treasure, his young son, had been paralyzed after a terrible accident a few years ago. The doctors said there was no hope for a full recovery. Every day, the boy sat in his wheelchair, staring out the window with sad eyes, unable to play or run like other children. The millionaire had spent millions on the best doctors, therapists, and advanced medical equipment, hoping for even a small miracle. Yet, nothing seemed to help. Watching his son struggle, trapped in a body that refused to obey, broke him inside. Money could not fix the boy's pain, and no luxury could bring back the laughter that had once filled their home. The mansion, though beautiful, now felt cold and empty. The walls echoed with silence, and the laughter of servants or the sounds of machines could not fill the void left by his son's suffering. At times, the millionaire would sit by his son's side for hours, holding his hand, hoping to feel a connection, a sign that everything would be okay. The boy smiled sometimes, but it was faint, almost sad, as if he understood his father's despair. Nights are the hardest. The millionaire often lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what could have been. He remembered the days before the accident, when his son ran freely in the garden, chasing butterflies and laughing without a care in the world. Those memories now felt like they belonged to another life. Despite the comfort of wealth, the millionaire felt a deep emptiness. He realized that all the money in the world could not heal a broken heart or restore a lost childhood. Every time he looked at the smiling faces of children in advertisements or on TV, he felt a pang of longing and guilt. He wondered why life had been so cruel, why his son had to suffer, and why no amount of money could change his fate. Friends and colleagues offered advice, suggesting more doctors or expensive therapies, but he no longer cared for these solutions. What he wanted was impossible to buy: a cure, a miracle, or perhaps just a sign that his son's life could still hold happiness. In the midst of this struggle, the millionaire kept up appearances. In public, he remained confident and composed, a man who had everything. But in private, he was haunted by worry, fear, and sorrow. He rarely left the house anymore, afraid of the world outside, afraid of seeing other children playing freely while his own child remained trapped. The mansion, once a symbol of success and power, had become a prison of his own making. Every room reminded him of what he had lost and what he could never regain. He tried to fill the emptiness in small ways. Sometimes he would bring toys, expensive gadgets, or games for his son, hoping to spark a smile. He hired musicians to play in the living room, thinking music might lift the boy's spirits. He even tried hiring storytellers and teachers, people who could teach his son new skills or entertain him. For a moment, it seemed to work. His son's eyes would light up, and a small smile would appear on his face. But the happiness never lasted long. Soon, the boy would fall silent again, staring at the ceiling or holding his father's hand without saying a word. The millionaire's heart ached every time, realizing that no effort, no matter how grand, could replace what had been lost. Despite all this, the millionaire refused to give up. He still hoped for a miracle, some way to bring joy back into his son's life. He spent hours researching treatments, alternative medicines, and therapies from all over the world. He contacted specialists, scientists, and even spiritual healers, desperate for any solution. He offered enormous sums of money, promising to fund any method that could help. Yet, each day ended the same way, with disappointment, frustration, and a heavy heart. Even though he was a man of power, money, and influence, he had come to realize something very important. Wealth was meaningless without love, happiness, and health. His life had taught him that no amount of money could replace human connection, compassion, or the simple joys of everyday life. Watching his son suffer had opened his eyes to the true value of life. He understood that real wealth was not measured by cars, mansions, or bank accounts, but by the moments of laughter, love, and hope shared with the people we care about most. And so, in his vast mansion, surrounded by treasures, the millionaire remained a man of deep sorrow, holding on to a fragile hope that somehow, one day, his son's life could change. He did not know how, or when, or even who could help, but he knew one thing. He could not give up. His love for his son was stronger than any pain, stronger than any despair, and it was this love that would drive the events that were about to unfold. A story of unexpected courage, compassion, and the power of human kindness that would change everything forever. Life on the streets was nothing like the world of mansions and luxury the millionaire knew. Every day was a battle for survival, and the street child had already learned the hard lessons that most children never had to face. He was small and frail, his clothes torn and dirty, his feet calloused from running over rough streets and broken sidewalks. Yet, despite his struggles, there was a light in his eyes, a courage and kindness that no amount of hardship could extinguish. While most people would look at him and see only poverty, hunger, and weakness, there was something extraordinary about him. He had a heart bigger than most adults he had ever met, and he carried a sense of hope that defied his circumstances. The streets were harsh and unforgiving. Cars honked as they swerved dangerously close to him. Dogs growled over scraps of food, and sometimes strangers yelled at him to leave. He had learned to move quickly, to hide when danger appeared, and to rely on his instincts. He begged for coins, scavenged for food, and slept wherever he could find shelter. Rainy nights were the worst, as the cold would seep through his thin clothes, and he would huddle under broken roofs or in empty alleyways, dreaming of warmth and safety. But even in these moments of hardship, he never lost his sense of empathy. Whenever he saw someone suffering, an elderly woman struggling to carry groceries, a sick dog shivering in the rain, or a child who looked even hungrier than him, he would try to help. A small smile, a shared piece of bread, a comforting word. These were his ways of making the world a little less cruel. One day, while wandering near the edge of the city, he overheard whispers about a boy who could not walk, a young son of a rich man who had tried everything to help him. The street child's heart stirred. He did not know why, but something about the boy's story touched him deeply. Perhaps it was the unfairness of life, or perhaps he recognized a kindred spirit in the young child, someone trapped in a world they did not choose. Whatever the reason, the street child felt a strong desire to do something, to help in any way he could. He had no money, no education, and no power, but he had something equally important, a willingness to act, a courage to try, and a heart that would not turn away from suffering. The child began visiting the nearby area of the millionaire's mansion, careful to stay unseen. He watched from the shadows as wealthy people came and went, their lives full of ease and comfort, yet empty of understanding or true care. He noticed the mansion's staff and security, and slowly learned the routines and habits of the household. Each day, he observed more, understanding the lives of the rich and the struggles hidden behind the walls. But he did not approach out of fear of being caught or punished. Instead, he focused on what he could do to make a difference, thinking about small ways to help the paralyzed boy without drawing attention to himself. The street child's ingenuity was remarkable. He knew how to find things that others overlooked, how to turn scraps and discarded items into something useful. A torn blanket could be patched into a soft cushion. Old bottles could carry water. Leftover food could be cleaned and shared. He had learned to improvise because survival demanded it, but now his skills found a higher purpose. Every step, every plan was about helping someone he had never even met. His mind, sharpened by life on the streets, was creative and resourceful, and his heart, untouched by selfishness, drove him forward. At night, when the streets grew quiet, he would sit and think about what he could do next. He imagined ways to make the millionaire's son smile, ways to give him even a small moment of joy or comfort. Sometimes he thought about toys, simple games, or stories he could tell. Sometimes he thought about small acts of kindness that could make a big difference. A warm blanket, a bowl of food, or even a friendly companion to talk to. The more he imagined, the more determined he became. He knew he could not cure the boy or make him walk, but he believed that even a small gesture could bring hope. Other children on the street teased him for caring so much. They laughed at his plans and told him it was pointless. But he did not listen. He had learned that real strength came from caring, not from being rich or strong. And so, while others stole, lied, or ignored the suffering around them, he kept his promise to himself to make a difference, no matter how small. Every day, he practiced, observed, and planned. Slowly, he began collecting things he could use. A small wooden toy from a junkyard, a blanket from a discarded pile, and scraps of food he could clean and share. He even made little gifts from broken items, turning them into something meaningful. Each item was carefully thought out, a piece of hope he could send to the boy he had never met. Despite his hardships, the street child's spirit remained unbroken. Hunger, cold, and fear could not stop him from dreaming of a way to help. And in those quiet moments, when the city slept and the stars shone above, he imagined the moment he would finally reach the boy, the smile he would bring, and the joy he could create. That dream became his mission, and it carried him through every struggle. Little did he know, his actions were already beginning to have an effect. The millionaire's household noticed small signs. Packages of food left mysteriously, toys placed where the boy could reach them, and other small acts of kindness that seemed to appear from nowhere. Though they did not yet know the identity of the street child, he was slowly becoming a silent hero, a guardian of hope, ready to change a family's life in ways no money ever could. The day finally came when the millionaire's path crossed, even unknowingly, with the street child's. It was early morning, and the city was slowly waking up. The streets were busy with honking cars, market vendors shouting their prices, and people rushing to work. The millionaire, despite his wealth, had decided to step out into the city that day. He rarely left his mansion, preferring the comfort of walls that surrounded him, but a restlessness had grown inside him, an urge to do something beyond doctors, therapies, and expensive treatments. He wanted to see the world his son could not explore, the world outside the gates of his golden prison. Dressed in an expensive suit, with his face calm but his eyes heavy with worry, the millionaire walked slowly through the crowded streets. He tried to observe life, hoping to understand it, hoping to find inspiration or perhaps some small solution that money alone could not provide. But the city was loud, chaotic, and overwhelming. He saw people struggling, children begging, and families carrying burdens he could never imagine. A small part of him felt guilty for the life he had, a life where every need was met. And yet his son remained trapped, unable to move, unable to play, unable to escape the cage of his own body. From a distance, the street child watched him. The millionaire's presence caught his attention not because he was rich, but because he seemed different from the other adults around. There was a sadness in his eyes, a heaviness in his steps, something that spoke of a deeper pain. The street child felt an unusual pull, a curiosity that went beyond simple observation. He wanted to know who this man was, why he looked so troubled, and whether he, the smallest and poorest of all, could do anything to help. The street child decided to follow him quietly, keeping to the shadows. He had learned long ago that watching and waiting often revealed more than rushing or confronting. From behind crates and alleyways, he saw the millionaire stop occasionally, looking at children playing, at workers moving crates, or at families walking together. Each time, a small frown crossed his face, a sign of longing, a silent question about life's unfairness. The street child recognized that look. It was the same look he sometimes saw in himself, a mix of sadness and hope, frustration and wonder. As the millionaire walked deeper into the crowded streets, he stumbled upon a small commotion near a corner market. A child had fallen, dropping a basket of vegetables, and the market's workers were shouting at him angrily. Without thinking, the street child ran forward, helping the fallen child gather the scattered vegetables, smoothing the basket, and calming the crowd with quiet words. The millionaire stopped and watched from a short distance. He saw the child's care, his focus, and the compassion in his eyes. Something inside him stirred, a feeling he had not experienced in years. The street child, noticing the man watching, paused for a moment but did not feel fear. There was no judgment in the millionaire's gaze, only interest and, strangely, admiration. The millionaire felt a strange connection, though he could not explain it. Here was a child, poor and vulnerable, yet full of courage, kindness, and a sense of responsibility that many adults lacked. And yet, despite everything, this child gave without expecting anything in return. The millionaire's chest tightened. He thought about his own son, trapped in a wheelchair, and realized how little he had done to teach him empathy beyond giving him toys and medical treatments. For the street child, the encounter was just as significant. He saw the millionaire not as a rich man, but as someone carrying invisible pain. The child could sense it in the way the man walked, the way his shoulders slumped, the sadness in his eyes. He felt a surge of determination. This was the person he had to help. Not because he was wealthy, but because his son needed kindness, care, and perhaps even hope from someone who understood the value of selfless action. The street child had already begun planning small steps to reach the boy, but seeing the millionaire face to face made him realize how carefully he had to act. The millionaire continued to walk, now observing the child from a distance. Every act of kindness the street child performed seemed to draw his attention, and he began to notice something extraordinary. The child's courage and empathy were far greater than anything money could buy. The street child's simple gestures, helping, sharing, comforting, spoke louder than doctors, treatments, or expensive toys. The millionaire's mind raced. Could it be that this child, with nothing but a good heart, might actually teach him something his wealth could not? As the day went on, the millionaire followed his instincts, wandering into streets and alleys he had never explored. The street child moved like a shadow, always close but unseen, preparing for the moment when he could act for the boy in the mansion. Each step, each glance, each small act of kindness seemed to intertwine their lives, though neither fully understood it yet. The millionaire felt drawn to the child, sensing that his presence was not accidental, while the street child silently observed, learning, waiting, and planning. By the time the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the city streets, the millionaire had returned home with a mind full of questions. He could not stop thinking about the street child, the courage, the compassion, and the rare purity of heart he had witnessed. He knew, deep down, that this child had something to teach him, something to offer that no doctor or therapist could provide. Meanwhile, the street child returned to the small shelter he called home, quietly determined. He had seen the millionaire, he had understood the boy's pain, and he had formed a plan. A plan that, if executed carefully, could change everything. Neither of them realized it yet, but this day had marked the beginning of something extraordinary. A bond that would transcend wealth, status, and circumstance, a story of courage, kindness, and hope that would touch lives far beyond their own. The street child had returned to his small, cramped shelter, a forgotten corner of the city where the wind whistled through broken walls and the rain left dark puddles on the cold floor. But despite the harshness of his surroundings, he felt a fire of determination burning inside him. What he had seen that morning, the millionaire watching him, the quiet sadness in the man's eyes, the helplessness of the boy trapped in the wheelchair, had stirred something powerful. He could not ignore it. He could not turn away. He knew he had to do something, not for wealth, not for fame, but for the boy who had never known the simple joy of running or laughing freely. He spent hours thinking, pacing the narrow floor, letting ideas form and fade. Each thought was weighed carefully. He knew the danger of being discovered. People in the city often looked down on street children, or worse, punished them for trying to help. But he also knew that courage was not about being fearless. Courage was about acting despite fear. And this, helping the millionaire's son, was worth every risk. The child had no money, no fancy tools, no access to doctors or therapists. What he had was ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a heart that refused to be limited by circumstance. He began gathering materials that others might overlook: scraps of wood, old toys that could be repaired, cloth torn from discarded clothing, and small jars to hold water or other remedies. Every item he collected, he examined carefully, imagining how it could bring comfort or joy to the boy. Sometimes he would sit quietly, turning an old toy in his hands, imagining the smile it could bring, imagining the laughter he might hear if only he succeeded. He also began observing the mansion from a safe distance. Every day, he would watch the gates, the guards, the routines of the household. He noted the times when the staff changed shifts, when the millionaire went out, and when the boy was alone in his room. Slowly, he pieced together a plan. It had to be precise, careful, and quiet. Any mistake could ruin everything. And yet, despite the careful planning, he never lost the spark of hope that guided him. The street child's plan was not about grand gestures. It was about simple, meaningful acts that could change a life. Perhaps a warm blanket to soothe the boy at night, a repaired toy to entertain him, or even a small note with words of encouragement and love. These small things, he knew, could spark hope where despair had grown. He also considered the emotional aspect. The boy had been isolated, frustrated, and sad for years. A genuine act of kindness, delivered with care and thought, could break through the walls of sorrow that had built up around him. Even as he planned, the street child did not act alone. He confided in a few trusted friends from the streets, other children who had seen enough suffering to understand the importance of empathy. They helped him gather items, watch the mansion, and even create small messages of hope written on scraps of paper. The street child never asked for help for himself. Every thought, every action was focused on the boy, and slowly, their small group became a quiet force of compassion, working in the shadows to bring light where darkness had prevailed. The child also thought about the millionaire. Though he had only seen him from a distance, he could tell that the man's heart was heavy. There was guilt, frustration, and helplessness in the way he moved, in the way he watched. The street child realized that helping the boy might also help the father. Not because the millionaire needed a lesson in compassion, but because both had been trapped in their own worlds of sorrow. One act of kindness could change not just one life, but two, and perhaps even more. Days turned into nights, and the child continued preparing. He repaired toys with painstaking care, washed and folded cloth to make a blanket, and even mixed simple remedies he had learned from observing others in his community. Each item was tested, checked, and imagined from the perspective of the boy who would receive it. Sometimes he would close his eyes and picture the moment, the boy's eyes lighting up, a small smile appearing on his lips, and maybe even a laugh breaking the silence of the mansion. That vision became his motivation, stronger than hunger, stronger than fear, stronger than every hardship he had ever faced. Finally, the day arrived when he felt ready. He had everything prepared, every step carefully planned. The street child slipped through the alleys toward the mansion, moving silently, unseen, guided by determination and the hope of making a difference. He avoided the guards, timed his steps with precision, and reached the edge of the garden where the boy sometimes looked out of his window. With careful hands, he left the first items: a small, patched blanket, a repaired toy, and a tiny note with words of encouragement. He watched from a distance, heart pounding, hoping the boy would notice, hoping the act would bring even a fraction of the happiness he imagined. That night, the street child returned to his shelter, exhausted but exhilarated. He had done it. The first step had been taken. And though he did not yet know how the boy or the millionaire would react, he felt something he had rarely felt before: hope. Hope that his actions, small as they were, could ripple out to change lives. Hope that compassion, courage, and creativity could overcome even the greatest obstacles. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The start of a journey that would bind the lives of a millionaire, his paralyzed son, and a small street child in ways no one could have imagined. The morning light seeped gently through the curtains of the millionaire's mansion, casting warm rays across the boy's room. For years, this room had been filled with silence, the kind of quiet that seemed heavier than any noise. The boy sat in his wheelchair, gazing out of the window at a world he could not touch, a world of movement and freedom just beyond his reach. His father, the millionaire, watched him from a distance, torn between love, guilt, and helplessness. Every smile the boy had tried to show over the years was fleeting, and every attempt to play or explore ended in frustration. The mansion, despite all its beauty and wealth, had become a prison of sorrow, with walls that reflected pain rather than joy. But that morning, something unusual happened. A small, unexpected package lay on the floor near the boy's window, a soft, patched blanket, a toy that had been repaired with great care, and a tiny note with words written in delicate, uneven handwriting. The note simply read, "You are not alone. Smile today." The boy's eyes widened as he reached for the items. He had never seen anything like this before. No doctor, no therapist, no teacher, no toy from a store had ever brought such warmth to his heart. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of curiosity, a glimmer of excitement that flickered through his body, reaching places he had almost forgotten existed. The street child had watched from a distance, hiding behind a cluster of bushes in the garden. His heart pounded as he observed the boy pick up the blanket and the toy. He could see the smallest signs of happiness forming. A small laugh that broke the stillness of a room. A tiny smile that lit up the boy's face like sunlight piercing a storm. It was more than he had imagined. Years of hardship, hunger, and danger faded for a moment as he saw the fruit of his careful planning. This small act, simple and humble, had achieved what money and luxury could not. Inside the mansion, the millionaire noticed the change immediately. His son's eyes, usually dull and distant, now glimmered with a light he had almost forgotten existed. The father's chest tightened, and for the first time in years, he felt a mix of relief and awe. He could not yet understand how such a small gift could create such a profound impact. He searched the room, looking for the source, but saw nothing. No one had entered, no one had left. The presence of kindness was invisible, yet undeniable. The boy hugged the blanket tightly, feeling warmth not only in his body but in his heart. He held the repaired toy, turning it over and over, noticing the care that had gone into fixing it. He felt the thoughtfulness, the love, and the patience behind every stitch, every piece of wood carefully sanded, every word on the note. It was as if someone had reached into his life, into his very soul, and touched a part of him that had long been dormant. Tears welled up in his eyes, but they were not the tears of pain. They were tears of wonder, of joy, and of hope. The street child, watching silently, felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He had only intended to bring a moment of happiness, to make the boy smile, yet the impact was far greater than he had imagined. He realized that true kindness could travel across barriers of wealth, power, and circumstance, touching lives in ways that nothing else could. For the first time, he understood the ripple effect of his actions, that a single act, no matter how small, could change the course of someone's life, even in ways he could not yet foresee. Meanwhile, the millionaire struggled to comprehend the scene. His mind raced. Who could have done this? How could someone have entered the mansion unnoticed? And yet, there was no fear, no threat, only the unmistakable presence of goodness. He felt a strange mix of emotions, shock, confusion, and admiration. Deep down, he sensed that this was no ordinary act. The person behind it must have a heart unlike any he had ever encountered, a courage that defied circumstance, and a compassion that transcended everything he had known. The boy, still clutching the blanket and toy, turned toward his father with eyes shining. For the first time in years, he spoke more than a few words. "Thank you," he said softly, a voice filled with genuine emotion. The millionaire knelt beside him, holding his hand, trying to hold back tears of his own. He realized that this simple gift had done more than make his son happy. It had restored a connection, a sense of life and possibility that he had feared was lost forever. The street child, still hidden, felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for what he had given. He knew that he had started a journey, one that would continue in ways he could not yet imagine. He had acted out of empathy, without thought of reward or recognition, and yet he had already changed the lives of two people, the boy and his father. The realization filled him with quiet satisfaction, a feeling stronger than hunger, stronger than fear, stronger than anything he had felt before. As the day progressed, the mansion seemed to breathe differently. The boy laughed softly as he explored the toy, turning it and twisting it, discovering its hidden surprises. The millionaire watched closely, feeling a weight lift from his heart. The house, once filled with silence and sorrow, now carried small echoes of life and hope. It was a fragile beginning, but it was real, and it was beautiful. The street child returned to his corner of the city that evening, tired but joyful. He had seen the first signs of change, and that was enough to fuel his determination. He knew there was more to do, more ways to help, and more opportunities to bring light into a life that had been shadowed for too long. Each small act would build on the last, creating a bridge between worlds that had seemed impossible to connect. And so the first act of kindness was complete, not grand, not flashy, but powerful in its simplicity. It had brought laughter, hope, and a connection that money could never buy. It had proven that courage and compassion, even from the humblest of hearts, could transform a life, spark joy where sorrow had lived, and ignite a chain of events that would forever change the lives of the millionaire, his paralyzed son, and the small street child whose heart was far larger than anyone had imagined. The millionaire could hardly believe what he had witnessed that morning. His son's laughter, soft but genuine, echoed through the vast, luxurious halls of the mansion like a sound he had almost forgotten existed. He watched in awe as the boy held the patched blanket close to his chest, turned the repaired toy in his hands, and even hummed a little tune he had learned long ago. It was a small miracle, and yet the source of it was a complete mystery. No servant had entered the room. No teacher or doctor had left anything behind. Whoever had done this had done it with care, precision, and kindness, and had vanished without leaving a trace. Curiosity quickly turned to obsession. The millionaire searched every corner of the house, questioned the staff, and examined the garden, the windows, and even the gates. Everything was exactly as it should be. There were no signs of intrusion, no evidence of anyone entering or leaving. The items, the blanket, the toy, the note, were clearly the work of someone with thought and purpose. Whoever it was, they had not taken anything, caused no damage, and left only something that had brought joy to a heart long dulled by suffering. The millionaire's mind raced. How could someone with nothing accomplish something so meaningful? How could a single act, so simple in appearance, produce such a profound effect on his son? The answer eluded him, yet a sense of awe grew within him. He realized that wealth, education, and privilege could not replace empathy, courage, or genuine care. And in that realization, a strange mixture of admiration, confusion, and humility filled him. He felt small, almost powerless, compared to the courage of the unknown child who had touched his son's life so deeply. Meanwhile, the boy continued to explore the little gifts. He ran his fingers over the seams of the blanket, feeling the care stitched into it. He examined the toy, noticing the repaired parts and the effort that had gone into making it whole again. And when he read the note, "You are not alone. Smile today," something inside him shifted. It was as if a door that had been locked for years had suddenly opened. He felt hope, not the fragile hope he had known before, but a strong, warm hope that could survive even the darkest moments. For the first time, he truly believed that joy was possible, even in his situation. The millionaire watched from a distance, overwhelmed by emotion. Tears welled in his eyes as he realized the significance of what had occurred. A child with no wealth, no status, no power, had brought more happiness to his son than he himself had ever been able to provide. He had spent years buying toys, hiring therapists, and seeking treatments, but nothing had worked. And yet, this street child, with nothing but determination, ingenuity, and a kind heart, had achieved in moments what money could not in years. The millionaire's chest tightened, and he sank into a chair, unable to contain the wave of emotion crashing over him. He thought about his son's suffering, the countless days of frustration, loneliness, and silence, and he realized something profound. True wealth was not in gold, cars, or mansions, but in acts of compassion, courage, and love. He understood, for the first time, that no amount of money could replace the human connection that had been missing from his family's life. And in that understanding, he collapsed, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Not out of weakness, but out of awe, gratitude, and humility. He had been shown the power of selfless love by someone society considered powerless, and it overwhelmed him. The boy, sensing the change in his father, looked up with curiosity. He had never seen his father in such a state. Usually strong, composed, and distant, but now shaken, vulnerable, and deeply moved. The millionaire tried to speak, but could not find words. His heart was full of so many emotions: shock, gratitude, admiration, and the realization of how little he had understood about life's true value. The boy, sensing something extraordinary, hugged his father gently, and in that small embrace, a silent communication passed between them, a recognition of hope, love, and the possibility of healing that had once seemed impossible. The street child, still unseen in the nearby alley, felt a surge of pride and quiet satisfaction. He had not acted for recognition or reward. He had acted because it was the right thing to do. Yet the impact of his actions was undeniable. He had brought joy to a child, touched the heart of a father, and reminded both that even in the darkest moments, hope could be found. The child understood, in that moment, that courage and kindness had no boundaries, no limitations, and no conditions. That evening, the mansion seemed different. The air felt lighter, the walls less oppressive, and the rooms carried the echoes of laughter and joy that had been absent for years. The millionaire, though still shaken, felt a sense of clarity and purpose. He knew he had witnessed something rare and extraordinary, and somewhere deep within, he felt a growing determination to find the child responsible, to thank him, to understand him, and perhaps to bring him into their lives in a way that could continue the cycle of kindness. For the boy, the changes were even more profound. He had experienced a spark of happiness that had been absent for years. He felt cared for, noticed, and valued, not because of what he had done, but because someone had seen him as a human being worthy of love, attention, and joy. The laughter that had once been foreign now felt natural. The smile that had been rare now came easily. And in his small heart, hope began to grow, quietly but surely. The millionaire remained in his chair long after the boy had gone back to playing with the toys. He replayed every moment, every detail, over and over in his mind. He thought about the courage it must have taken, the ingenuity, the thoughtfulness, and the pure heart of the child who had done this. And then he realized something else, a truth that struck him more deeply than any wealth or success ever could. True miracles were not always found in hospitals or laboratories. Sometimes they came from the smallest and most unexpected hearts. And so, the millionaire, shaken but enlightened, began to see the world differently. He understood that power and money were meaningless without compassion. He recognized that true change came from selfless acts, courage, and empathy. And in that moment, he resolved that he would find the street child, not to reward him with riches, but to honor him, to learn from him, and to create a bond that would forever alter the lives of all three: the boy, his father, and the courageous child who had dared to change their world. Days after the first miraculous act, the millionaire could no longer stop thinking about the street child. The image of the small, brave figure, moving quietly through the streets, leaving gifts of warmth and hope, lingered in his mind like a vivid dream. The mansion, once filled with only silence and sorrow, now carried the faint echoes of laughter, joy, and possibility. The boy's smile had returned. Not fully, not permanently, but enough to ignite a spark of hope in the father's heart. That spark, fragile yet powerful, grew with each passing day, and with it, the millionaire's understanding of life itself began to shift. He started noticing small things that he had overlooked for years. The beauty of the morning light spilling into the room, the quiet resilience in his son's eyes, the courage it took just to smile despite so many limitations. The luxury that had once defined his existence now seemed meaningless compared to the simple acts of love and kindness that had brought genuine happiness to his child. Slowly, he began to realize that life's greatest treasures were not measured in gold or diamonds, but in moments of compassion, courage, and human connection. The street child, unaware that his presence had been observed more closely than he imagined, continued his quiet acts of service. He left small surprises, another repaired toy, a tiny bouquet of flowers, a handwritten note filled with encouragement. Each time, the boy responded with wonder, and the father watched, his heart swelling with emotions he could barely contain. The millionaire decided it was time to take action, not with wealth or authority, but with understanding, respect, and gratitude. One afternoon, he left the mansion, carefully stepping into the streets where the child lived. He wore no expensive suit, no flashy watch, only the humility and intention of a man who had realized how small he was compared to the courage and goodness of a child. He walked slowly, observing the alleys and corners where the street child had hidden, trying to imagine the life he endured every day. The sights of poverty, struggle, and resilience struck him deeply, more than any business meeting or city tour ever had. He understood that he had lived in a bubble of wealth, untouched by the realities that shaped the lives of so many, including the brave child he sought. When he finally spotted the street child, crouched near a broken wall, arranging small bundles of cloth and toys, the millionaire felt a mix of awe and humility. The child looked up, eyes wary at first, then curious. There was no fear in his expression, only intelligence, courage, and a sense of purpose that was rare, even among adults. The millionaire knelt down, slowly and gently, not wanting to intimidate him. "I want to thank you," he said softly, voice shaking with emotion. "You've brought happiness to my son, something I never could, despite everything I have. I don't know your name, but I need you to know how grateful I am." The street child studied him carefully. He had expected many reactions, fear, anger, or perhaps even skepticism, but not this. The sincerity in the millionaire's voice, the raw emotion in his eyes, convinced him that this man was genuine. Slowly, he nodded, accepting the gratitude silently, as if words were not enough to capture the depth of what had happened. Over the next few days, the millionaire began taking steps to change more than just his son's life. He started by providing the street child with basic necessities, food, clean clothes, and a safe place to sleep. But he did not offer wealth or luxury. He offered respect, opportunity, and the chance to continue making a difference. He saw in the child a teacher, a guide, and a reminder that courage and empathy were more valuable than gold. The millionaire also involved his son in these efforts, teaching him to help, to share, and to care, not through lectures or therapy, but through action, guided by the small hero who had shown them the way. The transformation was gradual, but profound. The boy, once withdrawn and frustrated, began to engage with the world more actively. He laughed more freely, spoke more confidently, and even tried to move his wheelchair in ways he had not dared before. His father watched, amazed at the subtle but undeniable changes. It was not a medical miracle, but a miracle of heart, hope, and human connection. Each act of kindness from the street child strengthened the boy's spirit and deepened the bond between father and son. The millionaire himself changed in ways he could not have anticipated. He no longer measured success by wealth or status. Instead, he focused on compassion, empathy, and the impact he could have on others' lives. He began funding projects to help street children, support local communities, and create opportunities for those who, like the child who had touched his family, had courage and heart but lacked resources. His business meetings became less about profit and more about purpose. His mansion, once a symbol of power, became a home filled with laughter, hope, and shared responsibility. The street child, too, underwent a quiet transformation. He gained safety, comfort, and opportunities he had never imagined, but he never lost his humility or his compassion. He continued to help other children in the city, teaching them the same lessons he had shared with the millionaire's son, that kindness, courage, and selflessness could overcome even the harshest circumstances. He became a quiet hero, not seeking recognition, but inspiring change wherever he went. One evening, as the sun set over the city, the millionaire, his son, and the street child sat together in the garden. The boy laughed, holding a toy that had been repaired and gifted by the child. The millionaire watched them, a smile spreading across his face, tears glistening in his eyes. He realized that life's greatest treasures were not in wealth, fame, or status, but in moments like these, shared joy, heartfelt connection, and the courage to care. And in that garden, under the warm glow of the evening sun, three lives, so different, yet so intertwined, stood transformed by one simple truth. Love, compassion, and courage could bridge any gap, heal any wound, and create miracles far greater than money ever could. The days that followed were filled with a quiet, steady rhythm of hope and healing. The mansion, once silent and heavy with sorrow, had transformed into a home of laughter, learning, and warmth. The boy's laughter, once rare and fleeting, now rang freely through the halls. His father, the millionaire, watched him with a mixture of awe and gratitude, realizing that no wealth, no luxury, and no treatment could ever replace the love, courage, and selflessness he had witnessed in the small street child. The three of them, father, son, and the brave child from the streets, had become inseparable, their lives intertwined in ways that transcended social status, wealth, and circumstance. The street child, who had once wandered the city with nothing but courage and a kind heart, now had a place where he was safe, valued, and respected. Yet he remained the same humble, compassionate boy who had started this journey. He did not seek rewards or recognition. He did not want riches, fame, or power. All he had ever wanted was to help, to care, and to make a difference. And now, in ways he had never imagined, he had accomplished far more than he could have dreamed. He had brought joy to a child, healed the heart of a father, and reminded an entire household of the power of empathy. The millionaire, deeply moved by the lessons he had learned, began to reflect on the life he had led before. He realized how much time he had spent chasing wealth, status, and material success, while ignoring the true value of human connection. All his money had been useless in bringing happiness to his son, and it had taken a child from the streets, someone with nothing but heart and courage, to show him the way. He felt a deep humility, a sense of awakening that changed the way he thought about life. He resolved to dedicate himself to spreading kindness, supporting those in need, and creating opportunities for those with courage and compassion, no matter their social status. Together, the trio became a symbol of hope and resilience. The millionaire used his resources not to buy happiness, but to nurture it. He funded educational programs for street children, supported medical care for families in need, and created safe spaces where children could learn, play, and grow. The boy, once paralyzed by both his body and his despair, began to thrive emotionally, discovering joy, curiosity, and confidence in ways he had never experienced. And the street child, who had taught them all the power of selflessness, continued to help others, inspiring courage and compassion in everyone he met. The mansion, once a cold fortress of isolation, became a center of warmth and community. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers came to witness the transformation. They saw that true wealth was not measured in possessions but in love, empathy, and the impact one could have on the lives of others. The boy, now more confident and joyful, would often tell visitors about the mysterious friend who had changed his life, a small child from the streets whose heart was bigger than anyone could imagine. And though the street child remained humble, he slowly became recognized as a hero, not for fame or recognition, but because his courage and kindness had created ripples that touched countless lives. One day, as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the millionaire, his son, and the street child sat together in the garden. The boy held a repaired toy, laughing freely, while the street child showed him how to play with it in new ways. The millionaire watched them, tears glistening in his eyes, feeling a gratitude so deep it left him speechless. He realized that the street child had given him something no money ever could, a lesson in the true meaning of life. He had shown him that love, courage, and selflessness were far more powerful than wealth or status, and that even the smallest acts of kindness could transform lives in ways no one could imagine. In that quiet, golden moment, the millionaire felt a peace he had never known. He understood that the world was full of challenges, hardships, and pain, but it was also full of courage, hope, and compassion. The street child had reminded him that it was possible to make a difference, no matter how small or powerless one might feel. And the boy, once trapped by his body in sorrow, now had a future full of possibility, laughter, and love. As night fell, the stars twinkled above the mansion, casting a soft glow on the garden where the three sat. They had been brought together by fate, courage, and selflessness, and their lives were forever changed. The millionaire, once obsessed with wealth, had learned the priceless value of empathy and kindness. His son, once limited by despair, had discovered hope and joy. And the street child, once alone and invisible, had proven that even the smallest hearts could achieve the greatest miracles. The story of their lives became more than just a family tale. It became a lesson for the entire community. Neighbors whispered about the brave street child who had taught a millionaire the true meaning of wealth. Children were inspired to care for one another. Families began to see that courage, compassion, and selflessness were the most valuable treasures one could possess. And for the trio, their bond continued to grow, strengthened by love, gratitude, and the understanding that true miracles often come from the most unexpected places. In the end, it was not wealth, luxury, or power that changed their lives. It was the courage of a single child, the love of a father, and the resilience of a boy who had once thought happiness was out of reach. They had discovered that life's greatest treasures are found not in material possessions, but in acts of kindness, moments of connection, and the courage to care for others, no matter who they are or where they come from. And so, the millionaire, his son, and the street child lived on, bound together by love, hope, and a story that would inspire generations. A story proving that even in a world full of obstacles, courage, kindness, and selflessness can light the darkest paths, heal the deepest wounds, and transform lives forever.